Okay, so good morning. My name is Rohit Tripathi, and I am founder of Ranchi Mall. And in case you don't know what Ranchi Mall is a firm which is purely incorporated on a blockchain. And what that means is, typically, when you have a firm which is incorporated, we have a lawyer out here. What do you mean by incorporation?
Oh, it will be difficult to explain.
Very difficult to explain. Okay. But you normally incorporate as per the government laws. And but if someone told you that you don't have to incorporate as per the government law, but you could incorporate on the blockchain, what would that mean? It would mean that the agreement, when you establish a new company, you have the state corporate law or the country's corporate law that apply, and which means that the articles of association. So when you're forming a company, you're telling all other people what everyone has to do, how everyone has to perform, who gets what, how the profits get distributed. All those clauses are called articles of association. And articles of association is signed by the government, and it charters you. You have to file that articles of association, and you have to they approve it. And if someone breaks, then you have the law courts, which is available out here. Not with the case of Ranchi Mall, because now we have blockchains available. So now you have blockchains, you can essentially put the same terms and conditions, probably with a little bit of modification, on the blockchain. And what it does is it gets you a vast pool of people who are not available right now to you. So if someone is not an American, it's not easy for him to participate in the American legal system and American corporate system. But on blockchains, we have no such restrictions. How is the identity on blockchain found? What was the identity on your blockchain? A key, right? A public key. A public key is your identity on your blockchain, And the same goes with all blockchain contracts. A public key can enter into a contract. So we are, if you have a computer science background and if you know object-oriented technology, so everything is an object, and objects are talking to each other. So you could see in those terms, Ranchi Mall is a company of only blockchain contracts, which means our incorporation is on the blockchain, and everything else is also a blockchain contract. So we have a product called which two products I'm going to talk about here. One is the real estate blockchain contract, the last one, and I'm going to talk about the internship blockchain contract. And the idea of having a blockchain contract, each of them are equivalent of a DApp, a distributed application, on a payment application. So every one of them is an independent payment unit. And if one of your departments or one of your operations is not doing well, you have a continuous indicator of it on the blockchain in terms of evaluation, because everything has evaluation. Okay? In December 2006, The Economist identified the development of the joint stock company as one of the key reasons why Western commerce moved ahead of its rival in the Middle East in post-Renaissance era. So the fact that the Western world had developed this methodological joint stock company, and the first company in the world to be incorporated in that mechanism was the East India Company. But the first company that was actually chartered and raised funding was the Dutch East India Company. And those company ended up as a joint stock company which was chartered by the kings, chartered by the royal crown, and they could raise money and they could create a system that could do new enterprises. And in the old era, the enterprise was to go into the sea and find new countries, discover spices, discover India. The fact that they had this mechanism of a joint stock company, that in essence has resulted in the Western economies becoming so much more powerful than the then big power of the time, the Middle Eastern economies and India.
So by joint stock company, you mean publicly traded companies?
Publicly traded companies. Okay, by joint stock company, you mean you have a big venture, and instead of to raise funds, instead of 1% funding or 2% funding or 10% funding, Many people can fund in small amounts, and you could all organize yourself together as part of a joint stock company. Blockchain is version 2.0 of joint stock company mechanism. So at this point of time, people are still trying to struggle as to what the blockchain is and how it's going to impact. But it's simply, you could re-architecture the way a joint stock company was formed earlier, and you could now create your own companies on blockchain with the multiplier effect that in a joint stock company, only people in a geographical area could have participated in that enterprise. With blockchain, anyone with a public key can participate. And all he has to do is to transfer his tokens or his coins to an address of the company. And that's a revolution. People don't realize it. We don't. Things when internet came in 1995 or 1990, the boom started in 1998. But when internet came in 1995, we had a very clear idea that it was very simple to see how it's going to change the world. Because if you put everything online, your transactions became faster, data transfers became faster, people could reach more people, they could do e-commerce. Many new possibilities came, and everyone could imagine as to how that's going to transform the world. With blockchains, however, it's not so apparent, because a lot of things which are going under they are on the background of what led to modern civilization becoming such advanced and being able to accomplish so much heights and complicated projects, and all of that has been turned topsy-turvy because of blockchains. We still do not have a blockchain incorporated company. The first major application of the DAO, the distributed autonomous organization, which was done on Ethereum, in which blockchains, the real world application of blockchains, the financial application of blockchains are still in infancy, except one application, and that application is valuation of bitcoins or cryptocurrencies. Cryptocurrencies as a wealth generation function. So wealth generation ability of blockchains are now very well established. Bitcoin has one example is started at a price of 0.004 cents and went all the way to $20,000 before falling back to $10,000. But 50 to 60% swings are very, very normal. And it's what you called if you follow investment theory. In investment theory, there's something called a secular price, a price around which something would never go down. So the secular price of bitcoins right now is at least $7,000, and beyond which it will definitely. That's the valuation of bitcoins, and the valuation of the bitcoin. What gives anything value is the consensus of the people. That if people think anything has value, it has value. It is the consensus of things that gave gold value. It's the consensus of things which gave Bitcoin, which is giving bitcoins as a value. However, bitcoins is the first commodity in the world which is artificially constrained. For instance, the production of gold from 2000 to 2017 went up 40% per year. And gold is not a commodity that you find everywhere. Even then, the production of gold went up 40%. In case of cryptocurrencies, you could define a supply schedule where the supply will actually reduce over a period of time. And if the supply of something reduces, and you can change the settings. Sure. And if supply of something changes, and all that has to increase is demand, then what's going to happen? The prices are going to go up. And that's the whole reason why bitcoins have gone up, the price of bitcoins have gone up, because the supply of bitcoins has been constrained and the prices have been going up consistently. So we, as things are on very, very early days, I was observing bitcoins and blockchains for over 7 to 8 years now. But I never made a move until last year, because I had a trigger point. My trigger point was, if the prices of Bitcoin, they reach $1,000 again, because the Bitcoin prices originally touched $1,000 in 2012. But it was, you could say, a reaction to an economic crisis in Cyprus, when most of the Russian investors they started putting money in Bitcoin. So that's why the prices went to a temporary peak to $1,200, and it fell back to around $200 to $300, $350, where it stayed from 2013 to 2016. And I was tracking the price of Bitcoin, and I have a history and a background in stock market trading. So I'm a long-term investor, patterned along Warren Buffett. His actions and activities has given me, has anchored my stock trading decisions. So I observe something, and I mean, if you have a great asset, which is going to go maybe for 100 years, then it makes sense to wait 5 years for it and see how it observes and see whether your theories are working or not, and then make a big move on it. So I made my big move in the start of 2017, and I started traveling. So I went to China, I went to the US, I went to Ecuador, I went to Colombia, I went to Haiti. I went to different parts of the world to see the impact of Bitcoin, talking to people. At that point of time, the awareness of Bitcoin was very, very low. And it just so happened that 2017 was a breakout year for general public. Okay, I have to tell you that in 2011, the prices of Bitcoin went up from 0.008 cents to 0.04 cents in matter of days. That was a 20 times increase in matter of days. And in the circles of the Bitcoins, they thought it was a bubble at that point of time. But Bitcoin has multiple bubbles. The prices shoot up more than 20 times and then it falls back half after that. It has multiple times it has happened, and it will keep on happening. And so that's how I started evolving. So my first product was Bitcoin bonds. The second product was I did my own small ICO, initial coin offering, but I did it in a closed circle so that I can understand the process. And once the thing with blockchain is this, a lot of people are building the technology layers on blockchain. For instance, Charles Hopkinson, who was one of the founders of Ethereum, he ended up breaking ranks and started another blockchain called Cardano. And Cardano is now one of the top 6 blockchains in terms of valuations. You know, it's a multi-billion-dollar blockchain. And so what people are doing is trying to enable you to run smart contracts onto it, including Ethereum. Ethereum was the pioneer in that. What we are doing is that assuming blockchains exist, assuming smart contract exists, what can you do after it? And our answer is blockchain contract. And so what are blockchain contracts? Blockchain contracts are simple expressions of obligations and benefits of all parties involved in transactions as written on the blockchain. As simple as that. In a smart contract distributes money to people given if a certain condition is met. You know, according to the condition could be time, the condition could be someone, temperature, the condition could be someone dies, or the condition could be someone defaults. You could a smart contract makes an automatic payment. In blockchain contracts, what we say is you don't have to worry about any of those things. You simply have to create a system, create an incentive structure of people, of all the participants, and if you just write that in simple English text onto the blockchain, all you need is ability to write the data onto the blockchain, and then we are saying that a human trusted person can do a job of creating wealth much better than an automated system. And this theory has been proved again and again in stock markets. In the stock market example, after the advent of supercomputers, there was a lot of automated trading systems that emerged. Many of them were artificial intelligence based, neural network based. Given a price data, how should you trade, buy and sell on the history of all the transactions and successful trades which have been made. All of the data was fed. Even those machines are not being able to beat the geniuses of investment like Warren Buffett, for instance. So in the stock market example, what we have seen is if a machine left on its own is not in a position to beat the financial performance of a trusted human being which everyone trusts. And the same thing we believe will emerge in blockchains as well. In the blockchain world, of course, there are no laws. So you will see a greater diversity of experiments being committed. So there will be a lot of scams There will be a lot of people trying to fleece people. There will be a lot of people, but in that universe, you will find a couple of outstanding ideas, and those outstanding ideas will be so sturdy, they'll be so powerful that it's worth the price of suffering those scams for humanity just for such ideas to emerge. It's just because those ideas will be a magnitude n times, or maybe hundreds and thousands of times bigger than what a joint stock company can produce presently. And the best company in the world, the joint stock company mechanism is producing at this point of time is Apple. Apple is about 700 and 800. The last I tracked is about $850 billion. And Bitcoin and all the blockchains put together, cryptocurrencies, on the peak they reached on their own without any government support, without any legal support, without any institutional support. So we're talking to some of the investors in US on this trip, and the people who have money are basically, they're all investing with the RIA, the registered investment agents. And registered investment agents are prohibited from investing into cryptocurrencies. So all the valuation that you're seeing at this point of time in cryptocurrency is coming only because of small individual people who have decided to play an experiment with it. Now imagine what would happen that over a period of time people realize that Bitcoins and blockchains are not a bubble which are not going to go away. At that point of time, you will see the valuation will go through a roof which will never be undone.
So here in blockchain contracts, you need like a human judge in case of a conflict, right?
In case of a blockchain contract, a person can overrule all the rules. So in my case, what happened, I did an initial coin offering, and in the initial coin offering, I created a centralized trading system because I wanted to control the parameters and I was doing my own experiment. So the prices of my token went up from $1 to $980. And then I realized that it's going so fast that entire city of Ranchi, I did my initial in my hometown on which Ranchi mall is named. So the prices went to $1,000. I realized if I don't stop it, the entire city of Ranchi will come into it. Because the price is going so high. So I had to put the brakes on. So I stopped the scheme, and then I also had the second task of making sure the valuation does not fall, otherwise that will create a panic. So I had to do a very narrow road walk to make sure that the system does not explode on its own. And I did that successfully. And so a human judge can overrule. So you are trusting. So what the blockchain is, the benefit of blockchain is giving you is that contract is written on the blockchain, which is then divided into multiple parts, and the ownership of that initiative, just like a joint stock company, is purchased by key holders on the blockchain, and that gives the funding. But you are essentially trusting that some human judge would mediate disputes and let the system go around, and that mechanism is how Berkshire Hathaway has worked. And the key judge here is Warren Buffett and his partner Charlie Munger, but most of the decisions are taken by Warren Buffett. And over 1969, people who essentially put $1,000 in 1969 were multi-billionaires by 1991. But we are now talking about a slow system. So a joint stock mechanism is a slow system. Blockchain is a very fast system. So if you have a guy like Warren Buffett who came on the blockchains, we are looking at least 1,000 times multiples faster growth on the blockchains. Another way of looking at it is that blockchain is a technology and a blockchain contract is the human application of the technology. So you were on the infrastructure, working on the infrastructure layer of Ethereum, we were giving the nodes for where people could run their dApps, and then the node would depending on the gas of the Ethereum, it would run out till the gas is spent, and hopefully the designers have done a good job of making sure that the dApp will never run out of the gas in the lifetime of the contract. Or the contract is the mechanism to refueling gas, but that's at an infrastructure layer, But assuming a node is assuming a dApp is there, even on dApp you can create a blockchain contract by making sure there's a human judge, which is the right word. And then in this section I'll come with some technical challenges, the theoretical challenges in doing the dApp way, and then you'll realize that. Logically, it has been proven that you cannot, through a pure logical system of rules, you cannot have a system which can be sound as well as consistent. What it means in practical terms is any automated system can be hacked, because you could, if you go for soundness, then you lose completeness, and if you go for completeness, you lose soundness. Which means that either the good guys have to be denied, or if the good guys have not if you make sure that every good guy request is addressed properly, then you have to tolerate some of the bad guys. And the bad guys, one bad guy is enough to break the trust in the financial system, which is what happened in case of Dow, in which all the funds were leaked out using a self-reference recursive attack onto the Dow. Blockchain empowers people in two ways that have not existed, and this is how the blockchain changed the world. The ability to legitimize innovation and new products without seeking approvals from governments, and the ability to create financial assets out of non-profit based transactions. Both of them are game changers. People don't realize how much impact governments have in terms of slowing down the rate of innovation or in terms of expanding it. So in a world when there is no government, innovation will be at a super high speed rate. If you can get legitimacy to such transactions, and if you can get such transactions funded, it would be like uncontrolled steam engine. And that by itself, I mean, what we are realizing from all of us are forced to relook as to how what wealth is being generated. What we are realizing from the Bitcoin and blockchain and experiment is wealth is a product of human interactions. And if you could streamline human interactions, you can generate so much of wealth that the basic necessities like housing and food and shelter and clothes, you could easily get it for very, very low cost for almost everyone on the planet. Essentially, if we get the blockchain theme right, the poverty problem is closed in no time, essentially. And that's why it's so critical. And that's what excites me, is the potential of what you could do if in a system, in an economic system when there is no government. And the second factor is also very, very important. The ability to create financial out of non-profit based transactions. So if suppose today you have to do charity, the only way to, or a non-profitable cause, there's only two ways to fund it. Either through charity and donation or through government grants. There's no other way, third way to fund a non-profit based transactions at this point of time. Blockchain again comes here and it changes the dynamics. You could create tokens, and the tokens, as the interaction of the attention span of the system increases, the tokens could have higher valuation, and people can share the financial interest by transferring the token to someone else. So, in a sense, what you have done is you have converted a non-profit based transactions being funded through a profit mechanism, which is a game changer. Again. So, these are the two factors on which we are now experimenting, and let me come back to you as to how we have done it. So we are just not, so in Ranchi Mall, we're just not talking about it, we are doing something about it. So we have all these, the contracts. Let me show you the first contract, one of these contracts, which is the world's first blockchain resort. So that's what Ranchi Mall has brought to the table. And you would say, what do you mean by a resort being on blockchain? So let me first show you some pictures and then I'll show you how it works. So the entrance is called Satoshi Nakamoto Drive, and I think this is the first place anywhere where Satoshi Nakamoto. I'm sure after the implication of the work is done, it will be all over the world, but I wanted to be there when it was first, and I think it's us who have done Satoshi Nakamoto Drive for the first time anywhere. So this is an entrance called Ranchi Mall. The name is Ranchi Mall Blockchain Alampuri Museum Spa and Resort. So we have this is a museum, spa and resort, and the different villas with different names out here. That's the swimming pool in the resort, and these are all Balinese style villas, and common spaces. That's Lord Ganesha, which is Bali is a Hindu island, and so that's the Ranchi Mall Blockchain resort, which is in Bali, Indonesia, and the concept is, although the resort is physical, but the ownership interest, or we can create some virtual assets and we can create ownership interest. And so the whole resort, the blockchain part of it is owned by what we call as the real estate blockchain contract. And the people who are investing into the blockchain contract are the one who will get the financial benefit of the blockchain resort. So So what we are doing is all people have to do is to invest into the blockchain contract, and the blockchain contract will have such properties, probably in more places, but one is good enough for us to start. And the financial gains that come from the result get split across the token owners, and as the token gets traded, which will derive its independent valuation, it gives the anchor valuation to the interactive valuation. Let's just say the two words, the anchor valuation and interactive valuation. And the interactive valuation will come because people are buying and selling tokens amongst each other. So we don't know how far it will go. When I did my ICO, I had absolutely no clue that, I remember I was seeing a video in which the price was $3. I had absolutely no clue it would go all the way to $1,000. But I've been through a process in which, the complete process in which how the price trends work and what are the forces that operate. So we will see. Right now we are not floated the tokens publicly yet. So, but once we do what we call as the units of blockchain contract, we'll see what happens from there. Now this is another contract that we are doing, and I wanted to present it. It's called the Internship blockchain contract. So, like at this point of time, as a university, who funds the university? Universities are funded by the tuition fees of the students, and it's funded by the government, and it's funded by donations, the three fundings. What if you change the incentive structure in such a way that, for instance, Carnegie Mellon, and Carnegie Mellon is getting some of the best students in computer science or artificial intelligence. What if they came here and paid no fees, but you could create a mechanism by which their output, the work that they do, the projects that they do, collectively contribute to valuation of their blockchain contract, and then that blockchain contract is owned by different people, investors, who gain by the increase in the token value of the so the investors give the token value. So what would happen then? Then there'll be competition to get the best students, and those students will not only, they will almost study free of cost, they'll be probably in future they'll be paid to be in one of those blockchain universities. So this altering of incentive structure that we could achieve on blockchains, you cannot achieve it anywhere else. And so that's the experiment we are doing out here. So we have about, I put 12 people. So we are using a blockchain called Florin Coin blockchain. And Florin Coin blockchain actually predates Ethereum, Vitalik Buterin. The reason how I came on to know the owner of the people, Florin Coin started with an unknown guy called Sky Angel on Bitcoin Talk, and he vanished away. He was like Satoshi Nakamoto. He never came public. But there's another guy called Joseph Fiskela, who started talking about it out of New York. And what they did, they kept the Satoshi Nakamoto core base, they kept the Bitcoin core base and added a comments feature. Because if you know Bitcoin, it's very difficult to put any comments on Bitcoin. And all they did was they let like Twitter, like 520 characters or so. You could put it under the blockchain, and that was enough to do a blockchain contract. And since the code base of Satoshi Nakamoto was already there, we had to do minimum modifications to get all the wallet functionality. That's why we selected them. So these are the people who are working on these are the projects. That's again an experiment, and we have not yet sold the individual units of this blockchain contract, but we will. Once we have the structure ready, we will, and then if we come again next time, we'll report as to how the valuation of this contract went. Because each gap, you have a question.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you.
No, please interrupt. Yeah, please. It's fun if you want to interrupt. Yeah.
There's a question about the university blockchain contract.
Yeah.
So I guess it's a cool thought that if we change the incentives to be we want the best students. So what are your thoughts on one reason why CMU just doesn't take the highest GPA of and GPA and SAT of everyone, and then look at all the sports and collectively just take the top 100 is because you want diversity in your school, right? So maybe affirmative action too,
right?
Government policies that can influence the way that we admit people into the school. So what are your thoughts?
Why do you need affirmative policies? You need affirmative policies in a economy of scarcity. So suppose you have education facility for only 5% of the students. Okay, that's the global ratio for higher education. Then you have to select which are those 5% going to be. And if the human society has been that if things are left on its own, then the most powerful will corner all the 5% for themselves. I had once volunteered in an earthquake in Nepal, and all the aid and charity which was coming, it was only going to the high caste people. It was never reaching the lower caste people at all.
Yeah.
So the same thing. So in that scenario, you have to make sure that affirmative policy is done so that people who are left out, they are brought into the system. But that works in a scarcity economics. But suppose you had a abundant economics, like we had enough resources for everyone. And like in Bitcoins, people had $100, they became $1,000 who put in 2011, they became millionaires, right? I mean, people who put $1,000 in Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway in 1969 and stayed till 1993, they become millionaires. So if you had a society where anyone can become, when the theory is established and enough precedence has been created, then everyone can become a millionaire, then you don't need affirmative action. Then you have abundance of choice. Because even the person who was the weakest has at least 10 different choices at that point of time. And at that point of time, people will not come because there is a reservation or there is a diversity. They would go for essentially you can create a university out of 50 people and can achieve a quorum and it could achieve a financial viability. But those 50 people are the people who are really interested, like you are interested in dApps, and you're interested in the infrastructure layer. All like-minded people will come join towards a common cause, and each of them can be funded independently without asking money from government or private individuals, if they can create a world-class system. So once a world-class system is created, then it will automatically attract more world-class system. And so you wouldn't, in an abundant economy, you wouldn't need affirmative action at all.
Okay.
It's a cool thought.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, it's a cool thought. Yeah.
Pretty idealistic. No.
And it's real because it has happened. I mean, the people who have been through the Bitcoin,
Yeah.
they are seeing. I mean, they're driving Porsche and they had no money. I mean, most of the people have absolutely no idea how they became rich, and they're not even sure it's a real thing or not a real thing.
Yeah.
I know it's a real thing. I know it out here, and it was just done by one guy, somewhere who released a paper. He created a system. He created an incentive structure. So essentially, I'm going to talk about Nash equilibrium later on. It's a Nash equilibrium in a non-zero sum game where all the parties are in stable states. Okay, that's what Bitcoin is in. So which means that Bitcoin prices will keep on going, expanding forever. And I put something on my Facebook, and Kaman Rekhi.
Yeah.
So there was a Kaman Rekhi, he's one of the investors who invest basically on Indian ventures. He said that it's a bubble. Then I explained why. I'm going to talk that about here. Why Bitcoin is not a bubble. There's a specific section on that. And he said, and then he found out an example of a bubble which has never burst. Do you know what that bubble is? The Big Bang, the universe. The universe was created 13.5 billion years ago, and it's a bubble which has always been expanding. And that bubble has never burst because it's keep on expanding and it will keep on expanding. And no one yet knows how the universe itself will come to an end. We don't have an idea because it's a kind of bubble where all the all the stakeholders are in some kind of Nash equilibrium of expanding type. It keeps on expanding. So the next section, it was Carnegie Mellon. I thought I'll make it technical, not technical. So now a little bit of technicals will come in. But you can stop me and you can, we could talk. So let me first come about with what is an economic bubbles and what causes economic bubbles. Okay, and the two quoted economic bubbles. The first economic bubble which is quoted is that of the tulip bubble that happened in the Dutch world, early Dutch world. And the second bubble is the dot-com bubble. But you can give me any bubble. What I'm going to say, the factors are exactly the same out here. Okay, so a bubble happens in a commodity where there's a gap between supply and demand. Okay, so suppose today I want 100 units of tulip, but to create a tulip bulb, you would need at least 2 years. So you have to wait at least 2 years before a new tulip can come. In those 2 years, that's when the bubble happens because no supply can come. And anytime in markets, and that is very important to understand in economics, the value of price. Price is a signal. Okay, if someone came and gave you a salary of $10 million per year, you can guarantee that course will attract a lot of people. In fact, there's a lot of interest in blockchains at this point of time. Everyone wants to know blockchain. It's because blockchain is a financial success. And Ripple is doing research in secure multi-party computation, and if secure multi-party computation became a financial success at some point of time, which it will because they're all revolution technology, then you will find a lot of people start coming into attending classes just on secure multi-party computation. So price is a signal. Now, if suppose the price goes down, it's a signal to all the suppliers, get out of the market. If the price goes up, it's a signal to people, the society wants more of that stuff. And more of the people came, and ultimately the price settles down somewhere between what is called the price equilibrium. That's the economic theory. Now, assuming you have a good where the prices are too high but supply cannot come in, what would happen? The prices would go out, and sometimes it can balloon out of control. And so economic bubbles are caused because you have a good where the prices have gone up, the signal has been given, but supply can just cannot come up. But what happens in the interim? There's so much of supply is being prepared. There's so much of supply is coming along the way that it is impossible to like by the time the supply hits the market, it just drowns all the demand like a tsunami. And that's what happened in tulip. No, the tulip crisis started in 1734 when the bulb prices went through the roof. It took 2 years. By 1737 February, the supply, in the peak of tulip crisis, a 500-acre farm was selling less than the price of one special kind of tulip, which was tainted because of a disease. And when the supply came, the prices were worthless, basically. The same thing happened in dot-com crisis. In dot-com crisis, you had these sudden frenzy of the stocks of internet companies, but there were just not enough companies to be found out. So anyone who came with a company, if the name was .com, cat.com, pet.com, any .com, it went to the roof because so much of supply was there. But it doesn't take a lot of time for people to come with a company, have some server space, hire some people, and just make a product even if it is not profitable. By March 2001, so much of .com companies had come that it had almost it was 10 times more than what the supply was, and the market crashed heavily. However, I have to make an observation out here. The price of Amazon in .com days was about, at the peak price, it started from about $2 something, $3 something. The prices went all the way to $12. And from $12, it fell back to less than $2. But if you had stuck with Amazon, because Amazon was one of the winner companies, and if you could have identified even in the .com bust that Amazon is the company that you have invested, and you had stuck with that company till now, the price of Amazon is about $1,400 right now. So you have got more than 1,000 times your return. So it's the same thing which happens if the quality of asset is high. You can simply sit on it, and no matter what the boom and bust happens, if you're a long-term investor, you'll get a really high rate of return. And that's the bet that we made with Bitcoins, because Bitcoin was the first currency. It's the currency that has got maximum name recognition, maximum technology support, maximum marketing support. So no matter what boom and bust happens along the way, Bitcoin will survive it. And even if there are many altcoins that will come along the way, but the first one is the first one. And Bitcoin is special because Bitcoin had 4 years of its exclusive time, in which no one, and that lead is almost impossible to release, because this is not something, you don't have a company, there's no point of weakness here. So this is the fact that I want to emphasize in this talk, that Bitcoin is different than what causes its economic potential and the economic rules are much different. Now, specifically to computer science, people don't realize, but without being so explicit about it, because I've read the entire paper of Satoshi Nakamoto and all the emails, he was not being specifically about this exactly in those, he was not searching for solution to this problem, but he solved the Byzantine general's problem, and he gave the first mass acceptable solution. And in case you don't know what that problem is suppose the problem came from computer science networking. If you have in networking 5 different computers and talking to each other, and suppose 2 of those computers misbehave, then how do you know which computers are speaking the truth and which computers are not speaking the truth? So there are 2 different cases. One is the non-malicious case, in which the computer which is misbehaving there's a fault out here, which is an easy case to find out. But the cases where the computer is acting non-malicious, turns out it's a very difficult problem to solve unless you have a clear leader who resolves it. But in a pure decentralized system, when you don't have a clear leader, you just cannot solve it. And this problem was made very, very famous by Leslie Lamport, researcher from Microsoft, Apple's previous company. and he did the lion's share of work, and he came with an algorithm called Paxos. And Paxos algorithm was actually a very complicated algorithm, and it did not go all the way. But then the world did not need anything in which you truly had to solve a pure decentralized computer problem with some of them acting as maliciously. And then there was a result called FLP, Fisher FLP. There's FLP result that came into the field in which it was proven that in asynchronous mode, even if a simple single computer, if he acts maliciously, then you cannot have a consensus at all. And that held back the results for a lot of years, And although some people then again came with a solution, and the way blockchain solved that problem was inventing a new concept. They overrode computer science with human interactions, and they created this concept called. They said they made people compete for each other for rewards in the system. And that the competition for each other, he solved the maliciousness problem at two levels, at a human level as well as computer science level. And that's how he could get around the FLP boundary, And he also imposed a time constraint. So there's a time constraint of 10 minutes, in which a new block has to be done. So he relaxed it slightly, the asynchronicity. So it became partially asynchronous. In that setting, it was sorted out. But it was on its own, probably this solution will get a Turing Award, but no one knows him, and no one knows about it, and it's having an impact, and people are afraid of associating with them. It's not getting as much. And the second fact is Satoshi Nakamoto did not use any complicated cryptographic constructs, and this blockchain technology is not at all, any of the construct is not at all leading. I mean, there's digital signature, there is hashing, and almost that's the extent of cryptography which has been used out here. So the cryptographic, although it's a cryptocurrency, the cryptographic primitives are very, very elementary. And because it was very, very elementary, people thought that it's not worth recognizing it. But they missed the ball on the human side of it, the incentive side of it, that how he merged the human incentive design to create blockchain. And now they are revisiting the whole concept as to how can blockchain help in security proofs. And I was talking to Vipul, and so blockchain by itself can be used as a security proof, as an instrument which was not available earlier. So from the technical dimension of it, from an approach, I think it's a very ingenious product, and it's a very ingenious way of doing things out here. Now, this thing that we have to realize, that I try to emphasize to the people, that if you want to go besides the technology, and if you want to extract more mileage of the technology, get into the soul of the solution. And the soul of the blockchain solution is consensus. If you could get people to agree on one point, you have achieved consensus. And you might do through a technological mean, but you can also do through a human mean. So if you have, let's say, achieved consensus through any way, you have achieved the purposes of blockchain. So in my case, when I did Ranchi tokens, I did consensus only on a human judge basis, which is I convinced people that this is the kind of thing that they should do, and all of them achieved consensus. And I had to use no kind of mining, no proof of work, no proof of stake, just I got people to agree. So if you could get people to agree, because blockchain goes much more than mining and consensus, but consensus is the soul. And if you get people to agree on one particular point, then you basically got to the root of the blockchain, and you could have all the wonders of the blockchain. Even if you don't have mining, you don't understand the mining and technology, you cannot get anywhere. I want to do a small discussion on proof of work versus proof of stake, and what I want to say is, and these two slides, after this I'm going to talk about let me come to this slide first, which is, do you think that energy resources, there's one of the criticism which is being made against Bitcoins is that it consumes a lot of electricity. And what I would like to say is again, this comes from a scientist called Harold Hotley, and he said, just not electricity, but all oil in the world, all coal in the world, in fact, all metals in the world, all of them are infinite. If you look from price behavior, there's an engineering way of thinking, and there is an economic way of thinking. So if you look at engineering way of thinking, supply can go out. But has mankind run out of any material ever ever? We still have oil, we still have coal, we still have iron. Mankind has never run out of any natural resource. Because, why is it so? It's because all natural resources are infinite, economically speaking. So as people have more funds, as people have more money, and as people have, the economic systems become more advanced and there are more surpluses being generated, human ingenuity finds newer sources of oil. Human ingenuity finds newer sources of energy and newer innovation, replacement, and that's why the latest in oil has been fracking. Fracking did not exist 20 years back, but when the fracking came, which was made enabled when the prices of oil went beyond $120 on a consistent basis, so much of supply came that the prices of oil went back to its natural equilibrium of around $60 per barrel. Per barrel, that's correct. And I remember when I first came to US and I was paying $4 a gallon to drive across the US, and now I pay about $2.5. And and that has come because economically the price has fallen. Economically, it means we have more oil now than we had 10 years back. And even in the reserves it can show. When I was growing up, I made a presentation in which I had projected I read somewhere that the oil will be finished in 34 years. Okay, this was 1985. We are almost there 22 years, 30 years from there, and I think there's no sign that the oil is finished on the planet. Okay, so the same thing happens on electricity. Electricity is infinite. In fact, if more electricity is being generated, it means there's more wealth which is being built in society. So the fact that Bitcoin uses something called proof of work, which is essentially an electricity, it consumes and burns more electricity, which is one of the criticism. It burns more resources. That's not a penalty on the mankind. Okay, if the prices are good enough, more and more people will come and find ways of finding that electricity, and in fact, it will help alleviate. It will solve the resource distribution problem. It will help alleviate the problem of people will come off poverty. So if you take away that electricity cost, then proof of stake. So the two basic streams. One is proof of work, when someone has to do a lot of hard work to be able to control what goes into a block of blockchain. And that hard work is solving a hash problem. So you have to find a hash which is a pure random function, and you have to find a hash which matches a certain pattern, and that pattern is maybe 21 zeros in the front, and then you could have any character. So the condition is the value of the hash has to be lower than the threshold value, and if you can meet a hash, that means you have earned the right to mine the blockchain, and that what it means is you have earned the right to put all the transactions in that block. But if someone works hard to get what he achieves, that's a fair system. If someone gets the spoils just because he was rich already, or he puts some of his riches, that's an unfair system. And I think all proof of stake system, although proof of stake achieves higher speeds and higher transaction throughputs, I think over a long term it will not. It's not. People will find that it's much more fair to work on a proof of work system. And in the question and answer, probably if you have some questions, you have questions.
Yeah. Wait. Okay, but then we're already seeing a point where richer people are there's no point in me trying to mine on my laptop.
Right.
I never compete with the ASICs and
Correct.
the mining farms in China or whatever.
Correct.
So I mean.
So you would do something else. You would move up the chain. So what? That's an infrastructure layer. So I never even mined. I never even attempted mining because the juice of Bitcoin is not in mining. The juice of Bitcoin is enjoying the spoils of mining. And the spoils of mining is Bitcoin. Right? So that what trading system does is if you don't have natural competencies to mine yourself, what you buy Bitcoins. Okay? And anyone can buy Bitcoins. And when you buy Bitcoins, then your surpluses are much higher, and all you do is wait for some amount of time. And if you wait for wait for 3 years, Bitcoin prices have to go up in a 3-year bucket. And when it goes up,
I think his point is that you can do the same in proof of stake also, right? So to be successful in proof of work as well as in proof of stake, you have to be rich, you have to invest some capital, and then there's no difference.
No. So what happens in proof of stake? So proof of stake has another problem called proof of no stake. So what happens is if you have money and you put into which the proof of no stake problem is not present in proof of work. Okay. So if you go into proof of stake kind of system, then you could basically mine 2 blocks simultaneously because you don't need any hard work to do it, right? All you have to do is to just say this transaction is correct. So you could actually mine two competing chains simultaneously, hoping that if this guy wins, then I can get rewards from here also, and if this guy wins, I can get rewards from here also. Like you have that Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, okay? If they are equivalent, so you could simultaneously put the same transaction. You could have two competing versions of the same transaction, and proof of stake does not have enough number of barriers to prevent that. Okay.
So proof of work actually can also be seen as proof of stake. So for example, let's say you own 5% of the computing power on the network.
Correct.
Then it's the same as having 5%.
But then there is no. But the difference in proof of work is it's a self-correcting system. So what happens is if you own 5%, but the cost of the 5% is so high that that it's not a stable 5%. It's a 1.5%. Then if the cost becomes so high, then more people will come. So like we had a company in India which became one of the largest, but it fell off because it couldn't keep up with the pace of increase in the hash power. Okay, the hash power is increasing so much that you cannot maintain 5% unless you put more investments. And so it's a self-correcting system. So if you have 5%, the 5% because the proof of work is getting more work than out. You have to invest more money. At that point of time, you will think whether it's worth investing or not. And if you are incompetent, if your economics does not work out, you will drop off. That's what economic theory is. These things are not present in proof of stake. In proof of stake, you can simply contribute your stake to validate a block, and if you validate a block, then you can. So then, to solve this problem, what Vitalik Buterin came a solution. He gave the solution of punishment. So he gave some punishment algorithm, but those all making the life complicated. So proof of work is very simple. Do the hard work, earn your rewards. In proof of stake, you have to have your stake, then you get the rewards, but you can also go for multiple rewards because you want to cheat the system. To solve your punishment, then people will find way to subvert those punishment mechanism, and then the game goes on continues. So essentially, you are not achieving mass equilibrium. You are getting into, you are creating incentives for people to cheat. In proof of work, there's no incentive to cheat. Because you do hard work, you do real hard work. You have to put real money and there's a real cost out there, and that cost is something which is fair. So if something becomes very, very rich, obviously the rich will have an advantage. No one has been able to subvert that. But in the blockchain Bitcoin work, you can fork something else and start all the way from your own. The way Bitcoin Cash did, So you have, if you are really frustrated with the system, you can do the whole software is open source. You can just clone the whole software and start another block and go ahead.
But isn't it also true that the more there's circulation of wealth, the more everyone, just like we've seen in, like, let's say in the United States, as society gets wealthier, even the poor have more money.
Correct. And the poor have the more money. That's right.
You're talking about just a general uplifting of...
general uplifting of everyone happen. But we are comparing between proof of work and proof of stake. So over a period of time, you will find out that proof of stake will become so complicated to maintain fairness. When proof of work, all you have to do is to find the right hash. And to find the high price, the cost incurred is which everyone should incur. I think it's a fair system. I think it cannot be. Our take on that is the fairest system yet. Okay. All right. Now we're going to talk about. Yeah, I got 5 more minutes left. So I'm going to talk about Nash equilibrium. I'm almost at the close of the talk. So now the good thing is that we have a mathematical model. Okay, although no mathematical model can exactly replicate what's happening in the crypto dynamics. But we have something. We have game theory, and in fact, everyone they talk about game theory. And so what John Nash did, that originally game theory was invented in context of non-zero games, which means zero-sum games, which means I win, you lose. And and game theory as Oscar Morgenstern and von Neumann. Von Neumann was also famous for defining a computing model, von Neumann machine. So von Neumann and Oscar Morgenstern, they created game theory for a game where if I give you money, like someone stealing your money, so the one who steals he gains, and one who has been stolen from loses. So they created that game theory in that context. But John Nash invented this concept called a non-cooperative game. And what a non-cooperative game is, a non-cooperative game is a game with competition between individual players in which only self-enforcing contracts, alliances are possible due to absence of external means to enforce cooperative behavior, which is contractual. So they created a game in which there's no enforcement possible. And the only reason people are cooperating is because they think they're gaining with each other. And the moment the gain stops, they'll just drop off. And the concept that I used was called a self-enforcing mechanism, self-enforcing behavior, and that's why I use a term called Nash equilibrium. So as most blockchains do not have the benefit of courts of law, non-cooperative version of the game theory is one of the most prominent mathematical models to explain the behavior, which is what Vitalik Buterin, one of the leaders of thought in this space, also uses many times. He's a very big fan of game theory. He uses many concepts called Schelling points and things like those, So, a self-imposing agreement is an agreement of contract between two parties that is enforced only by those two parties. A third party cannot interfere or enforce. This agreement stands so long the parties believe the agreement is mutually beneficial and agreement is not breached by the other party. So if I trust in you and I know if I'm working for you, and then automatically you're working for me. So in this mechanism, Nash equilibrium is a set of strategies, one for each player, that no player has incentive to change his or her strategy what other players are doing. So if I'm making money from you and you're making money off me, then I have no incentive to not cooperate. I will keep on cooperating, and that's what's happening between miners and investors. So investors are putting money. The more money the investors put, the value of the coin goes up. When the value of the coin goes up, more miners come into the game. And when more miners come into the game, the system becomes more secure because it's difficult to have 51% hash power to take over the system. And the more system it becomes secure, it becomes more investable. There's more trust out there. So it's a Nash equilibrium between miners and investors, and both miners and investors are gaining by helping each other. And since this is an infinite bubble which I talked about, it's a continuous game. It's a stable Nash equilibrium, so it will keep on going. And I already talked about that. There's an economic way of thinking, there's an engineering way of thinking. In the engineering way of thinking, you will try to go for the best solution, highest technically complicated solution. You'll think purely from technical point of view, what's technically possible and not technically possible. But the economic way of thinking is how do you get other human elements involved and solve the same problem through some other means, the way blockchain was done. And I want to emphasize the fact that is just not engineering way which sometimes changes the world. You should also not discount economic ways as to human behavior as well, and that can make really technology really useful. If you have a blockchain, and I was thinking what are the principles that we should have. If you have a blockchain, then persistence spend that you have to keep on carrying because there's so much blockchains right now. There are millions, at least the last count there are 20,000 blockchains on CoinMarketCap who were trying to get into it, The values are created only in the initial days and initial users, and this is very, very important. That if you look at Quora, why does Quora gets high quality of particles? It's because they put effort in creating a culture in the initial days so that people can write good quality of particles, and that culture still survives. And the same is true with blockchain. So if you are creating your own blockchain, you have to make sure that the initial culture is fair, is good, is conducive, is harmonious. And once you have created a culture long enough, it will survive out here. Few core committed users and investors are more precious than huge number of short-term trippers. So I'm a very big believer of that. If you have some people but they're very, very core and committed, it adds more value than thousands of people who are just there to make a quick buck. And never underestimate the value of marketing. And in fact, I tell people that when you start, your marketing budget should be at least 50%. Like 50% of your budget should be marketing and 50% should be technology. Those are the two heads out here. You should never start with the assumption that just technology is important, because a technology that no one knows or no one uses is a technology is no good. And you really have to be a genius to be able to break through that, but most of us are not. So on my ending note, I would like to say that an economic system is a system of production, resource allocation, distribution of goods within a society or a geographical area. That's our economic system. Capitalism, socialism, all of them. A successful blockchain is an economic system. It's a standalone economic system. People can produce, people can generate, and people can distribute the goods amongst themselves. Human ingenuity is infinite. On blockchains, human ingenuity gets superior valuation to the point of infinite wealth, which is what we are seeing. People are doing less work and the wealth is enormous. And the delays in seeing the real world applications is because a system change of this magnitude from grounds up needs generation time. We have never lived in this world. So people are not understanding the application, and that's why it took so much time. Otherwise, once they start going, the idea should not take that much time. So that was my talk. You can contact us at facebook.com/RanchiMall and medium.com/RanchiMall. In medium.com, we put detailed articles on Facebook, our running events. Like this event will also go on the Facebook out here. And that's me. If you have any closing questions, you're most welcome. My name is Rohit Tripathi. You can probably we can befriend each other on Facebook, and then you'll get to interact with us. All right, thank you so much. That was nice. Do you have a question?
Yeah, can you explain about? So you said that the electricity is infinite.
Right.
So
Yeah.
can you explain more
Can
about
you,
it?
I'll explain that, yeah. So, if you had, let's say I told you that if you put a value, let's say electricity is sold at what's the per unit cost of electricity, how much you pay in US right now?
I think like 10 cents per kilowatt hour or something.
10 cents per kilowatt hour. Okay, that's the 10 cents per kilowatt hour gives you a certain amount of electricity. Okay, so let's say 10 cents of kilowatt is getting you 100 gigawatt of electricity in US. Let's make a hypothetical number. If I increase the price to 20 cents, what would happen in terms of supply? 100 gigawatts will go to 200 gigawatt. If the price double, roughly, the supply will double. So I'm talking economically, I'm not talking engineering, and I'll come to the engineering point of it, okay? So let's say...
So the point is, if it becomes more costly, then there's more incentive to produce it.
To produce more.
And,
So you could...
more solar power plants will come up, more wind power plants will come up, and so on.
So if you take... So the point is, if you price, if you are giving people incentives, so people have opportunities, people who are producing electricity, they can do other things as well, but they chose electricity. And once they chose electricity, like someone became an electrical engineer, they set up a power plant, they'll keep on doing it. But they have to make sure that what they get in is lower than what they give. Their cost is always lower than their earnings. All right. So from economic point of view, electricity is infinite. So let's say there's a scarcity. Suppose more machines comes out here. Okay, all the Bitcoin farms come out here. They'll start eating a lot of electricity. But at the same point of time, they're creating new wealth. And if people have more wealth and they can pay for the electricity, right now they're paying 10 cents. If they can pay 20 cents, you have double the electricity. And if you pay 10 times more money for those electricity, you have 10 times more electricity. I'm just giving you a random approximation. So it's all a matter of price. Okay. So price is if the free price mechanism is there, free price mechanism will give you as much electricity you want. You could have 10,000 times more electricity, and the planet will. Every mass and matter comes from this planet and stays in this planet, except for cosmic rays. But we are a closed system out here, and in the same planet we can generate all the electricity that we need. So economically, electricity, just not electricity is infinite, oil is infinite, iron ore is infinite, economically speaking, and so long as you can price for it properly. And so this was a theory which was given by Harold Hartling in 1937. And this theory was reiterated by Milton Friedman, who talked about it publicly in a talk called The Question of Energy. And he broke some of the myths of the people as to what they think. There was a time when people thought that peak oil will happen and the prices, there will be no more oil. That has never happened. Peak oil never happened. Oil, we have more oil now than we had ever before. Okay?
That's why I always say that blockchains and Bitcoin, it's as much innovation in game theory and economics as it is in cryptography. So for example, at some point people used to have this concern that somebody will take over majority of the computing power.
Correct.
And then Bitcoin will go away. But the reason why that did not happen is not because it's too costly or it's impossible from an engineering point of view.
Right.
But rather the reason being is that if I take over 50% of the network, then the price of the Bitcoin would just crash, right? So I am at a loss as well, right? So
why should I do something to cut my own
yeah,
roots?
so it's much better for me to keep my computing power at 25%, 30%,
right,
and own like 1/4 of the Bitcoin rather than just destroying the Bitcoin.
Correct. That's what it is. If everyone has full intention to make sure, there was a segment, people don't know, there was a block size debate, and half of the Bitcoin world, they thought that they will, before Bitcoin crash happened, they thought they will break the Bitcoin, but everyone realized when the prices going, everyone realized the prices went down, and everyone is going to hurt, and everyone came in tune out here. So the economic incentive, there technically is possible, but economically, why would someone want to destroy his own wealth? That irrational behavior has happened, but mass irrational behavior has not happened. Go ahead.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about your thoughts on scalability issues with blockchain, with Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Right.
So one of the biggest problems, let's say Bitcoin for example, Visa on every second handles thousands of transactions per second, right? But Bitcoin can only handle a fraction of that over 10 minutes.
And that's not a problem.
Really?
I'm going to tell you that's not a problem. Number of transaction is not a problem. What Bitcoin world offers is a security of an asset, which is a bigger which is a bigger function than availability of that asset. So people think, when they think Bitcoin is a money, in which case they can transfer money to each other. Bitcoin is not a money. Over the last 10 years, what we have realized, because the money has to have, one of the most essential characteristics of the money is it has to be stable in value, number one. And number two, it should fall relatively little bit in terms of all the other goods and services in the society. Because if the value of money was to go higher than the value of goods in the society, then people will not exchange money for goods. They will simply use it to store the money itself, because the money is growing in value.
But I would say people are doing that now, right? Like there's like this culture of huddle.
Huddle, which is hold on, which is exactly the right culture, and that's what one. If you could huddle for 20 years, you will multiply wealth as never seen before, just on bitcoins.
Yeah.
Okay. So Bitcoin is a store of value.
Yeah.
In store of value function, it does not matter. You don't need to have high number of transactions. You only have to have one transaction within 25 years in which you transfer Bitcoin. You get $10 million from someone out here. In a transaction scenario, when I'm paying for my hotel bill or my car bill or gas, in that case it's a problem. But Bitcoin is like the highest, it's like the Porsche of all the blockchains, or it's like the Maserati of all the blockchains. So you don't have to need. So all you need is if it's a secure network, if it has the highest amount of hash power, and no one can break it, no government. If the government of US and government of Russia and China put together, all the supercomputers, and they can still not break it. That's the confidence that the world needs, that no government can ever beat it. And for that, we don't need many number of transactions. So what happens is, because the capacity is limited, the capacity obviously is a scarcity here. And that scarcity itself is giving the value. And as the scarcity increases, the value increases more. So in Bitcoin world, you actually want more scarcity, which means lesser number of transactions. From the economic function, it does much better because it increases the hash power. And if you want to do more number of transactions, there'll always be some altcoin. Like you could have Dash, or you could have Monero, you have Zcash. I mean, the technology is from out here. So anyone else can also do just for the exchange of value. So you could go to Poloniex, convert your Bitcoins into Dash, send money using Dash, and then get it back into Bitcoin. If you want to really do a transmission, and if you're spending too much on the Bitcoin blockchain, So it's very, very clear that Bitcoin is not going to take over as an exchange of money function at all.
Okay. And then I guess like the other side of the scalability issue is also like storage of the actual blockchain itself. No one wants to run a full node because it's like prohibitively expensive to store like 300 gigabytes of data.
It's prohibitively expensive for an individual user.
Yeah.
But for a corporate user, for a machine or data, so that's the same problem with the firms. The firms they were hiring their own IT engineers and they were creating their own servers. All of that has moved into cloud. So if you go into cloud, then you don't need network engineers. You don't need you don't need someone to a room. You don't need a heating system. All of them has been outsourced to a cloud, and that's what the economic theory says. Economic theory says that if you have, all of us have a fundamental constraint, and that's constraint of time. Our time is limited, right? So what should be using your time for? You should be using your time for something that gives you most amount of value. So that's the reason the cloud existed. So it's the same thing as with Bitcoins and blockchains as well, which is the scalability issue that you talked about. All of it would be. Actually, I missed your question once again. If you can repeat your question.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just saying that like I feel like this goes against like the original. So the intention is that like if it's in a truly decentralized world, like everyone should theoretically like run a full node, because then you're verifying blocks, right? Like right now there's about 3,000 people who run a full Bitcoin node, a fully validated Bitcoin node in the US.
Right. But you don't. That's sufficient. That's what you need is hash power. And see what we are saying. Just with two companies, enough competition comes. If just T-Mobile and Verizon, enough competition comes. So just two nodes is enough to give you competition.
But
yeah.
So then, let's say, and so now U.S., Russia, and China, right? They don't like Bitcoin. Well, they just have to outcompete the number of.
They cannot. You know what's the hash power on the Bitcoin?
But they don't need to do hash power. They just have to they can just distribute it denial of service.
The moment let's say they do a denial of service, then some other node will come somewhere else because it becomes economically profitable somewhere else. So it's impossible to stop this. Even if you took all of America, all of China, all of Russia, all of India on the way, overnight someone will pop someone in and will give exactly the same amount of hash power because money is on the offer right now.
Right.
Okay, so it's not that it has not happened. It has that people have tried it and they've failed it. Like China, what China used to control 92% of all Bitcoin market till January 2017. Overnight, it did ban all the exchanges, and over 1 year, it banned all crypto activity from 92% to zero. Bitcoin prices have went up 10 times. Nothing has happened. And China was the biggest. I mean, America is coming slowly in the game right now. America is only now emerging. Right now, the biggest country in the world in crypto economics is Japan. But even if Japan went off the grid, someone else will come. That's why it's decentralized. See, that's the power of decentralized. That you have to make everyone in all governments in the world come together, and even then, some island could pop up and open up a Bitcoin farm and do the Bitcoin mining out here. So the 3,000 nodes is not a problem. I mean, the vision could be anything. In a decentralized system, it evolves, it takes its own life, and now it has far is beyond. All those visions are artificial. What matters is consensus. What consensus is taking people towards, how it is evolving, how it is emerging, and if the consensus still holds or not. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. Cool. That's nice. Thank you so much. Thanks for being out here. It was nice, and we'll collaborate and on virtual medium again. And when Ranchi Mall, we have not made Ranchi Mall tokens public, but keep in track. Something that you should keep track of. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Let me just